In this video, I'm going to show you how to launch a simple Ubuntu server with Apache installed on Chameleon Cloud. For this video, we're actually using the virtual machine features of Chameleon Cloud, also known as the KVM side. First, we're going to go to the OpenStack dashboard at openstack.tacc.chameleoncloud.org and then log in with our Chameleon account. Once we're there, we actually first need to create an access and security SSH key pair. So click on the Access and Security tab in the Compute tab, and in the Key Pairs tab, create a key pair, and I'll call this my key. This should trigger a download for a file called mykey.pem, which is the private key that corresponds to the public key that's stored on Chameleon Cloud. Now that we have the private key, the next thing we need to do is actually launch our instance. Go to Instances, Launch Instance, and first we're going to select an instance name. And the flavor is going to be the M1 small flavor. The source is going to be an image, and the image is going to be CC Ubuntu 16.04. Before we hit launch, click on Access Security and make sure that your key pair has been selected. Once that's selected, click Launch. While it's launching, you can associate a floating IP with your instance. You may have IP addresses already allocated with your project, but if you don't, just click the plus button. Then click Allocate IP. Your new allocated IP should appear inside the drop-down box, and you can hit Associate. Before your instance is accessible over the network, we actually need to allow certain ports into the instance. So go to Access and Security again, and we're going to create a security group. The security group is going to allow 2 ports in. We'll call this SSH and web. And for the security group, when we click Manage Rules, we actually want to add in a rule. First of all, we want to allow port 22 for SSH, and then we also want to allow port 80 for the web server. Once your instance becomes active, we can apply the security rules that we just created. In the drop-down on the Actions tab, click Edit Security Groups, and then we're just going to click the plus button next to SSH and Web, which is the security group we created, then hit Save. At this point, we should be able to SSH into the instance. If you're using Windows, you're going to need 2 programs to SSH into your instance. The first is the PuTTY key generator called PuTTYgen. We're going to use this to convert the PEM file that we downloaded to a format that PuTTY understands. Click the Load button, find the mykey.pem file, and then hit Save Private Key. We won't need a passphrase to protect the key, and we just call it mypem.ppk. Next, we'll actually use PuTTY to log into the system. We have to configure PuTTY to use the SSH key that we just converted using PuTTYgen. In the SSH dropdown, click Auth. Find the PPK file that you converted. Next, in Data, change the auto login username to CC. This is the default username for most Chameleon Cloud images. Finally, in Session, we're going to enter in the IP address that we associated with our instance. In this case, 129.114.32.59, although yours is going to change. The PuTTY window is going to pop up with a security alert asking if you want to save the server's fingerprint. Click Yes. And at this point, you're logged into the instance. Let's go ahead and install our Apache web server now. Type sudo apt-get install Apache 2. After Apache is installed, we actually need to configure the firewall on the virtual machine to allow web traffic in. After the firewall rules update, we should be able to browse in our browser to the IP address of our virtual machine. And here's the default landing page for the web server that we just enabled on our virtual machine on Chameleon Cloud. Once you're done working with your virtual machine, you should terminate the instance. After terminating the instance, you should release the floating IP that you allocated earlier. Go to the Access and Security tab, click on Floating IPs, and then click Release Floating IPs after checking the IP that you want to release.